I was reflecting with my younger brother last night. Okay, last week. I wrote this last week. And we were talking about those periods of our lives when we felt like we were being the most productive and which periods felt like they were the most depressing. For him, it was when he was first learning programming and building his first business, Swixd, and when he took gym seriously to the point that he became insanely buff. And for me, it was during every time that I made an album, like when I made Brilliant or 22 or the 52 Songs for 23 project. When I started weightlifting seriously and I developed a veiny six pack, and when I was doing daily outreach trying to find customers in order to grow my shop, those were the most fulfilling and the happiest periods of our lives. And the themes are the same for he and I. It's learning, fitness, and business. Every time we were intentional about growing in each of those areas, in hindsight, they were the happiest periods of our lives. You sure, like in those moments of flow state, when you're facing constant challenges and the thing you're trying to code just isn't working, you're facing a whole bunch of errors and you're just pissed off, you want to break your computer screen. Those micro moments might have like had a little negative energy in them. But in hindsight, the overall picture of that season of your life is colored in a very positive light because you know that you are growing. Like now that you have grown, you know just how much you were growing back then, and you're happy for that growth. So, in contrast, the most depressing periods of my life, well, I won't mention them for him. It was when I was drinking and smoking daily. I was watching movies and series all day. I was dating multiple women constantly, neglecting my business and my learning. And just generally being a degenerate. Sure, like those moments had instant pleasure, when you're drunk, you're like, you have a smile on your face. When you're fucking this girl, it feels good in that moment, and you're fucking that girl and that girl and that girl. It feels good. But then in the long term, when you're trying to recall, actually, what have I done that I can point to? What have I created that has led to some form of growth for me? You realize that those periods where you had the most instant pleasure are colored in a generally negative light when you start remembering about the fact that you were constantly broke from all the drinking and smoking, constantly stressed and like pissed off from dealing with annoying ass women just so you could get laid. In those moments, yeah, those things have like instant fun, but after some time, we always end up regretting them. And I don't think I'm the only person who sees this. And ironically, the more we focused on building, like the more we focused on, yeah, so like I was saying, ironically, the more we focused on the building processes, the easier it was to fall into the destructive processes. Like when I had that veiny eight pack and I was promoting my business aggressively, it was way easier to attract women and afford booze and weed. But when I focused on women, booze, and weed, I inevitably lost the ability to get those things as easily. And it made me realize that growth is the natural flow state for men. If we are not occupied with a mission, we end up becoming degenerates and the self hate festers. It festers because we men are keenly aware of our own potential. So to not strive towards it feels like a crime against ourselves, and we end up punishing ourselves even more. Some men never break out of this cycle because they're not willing to be humble even to themselves. That's how we end up in an endless rut of doing bad habits. And even if you've been at a peak point, it's hard to break out of that rut because that's how we end up in an endless rut of doing bad habits. And if you have been at a peak point, it's hard to break out of that rut because you won't be able to go back to that point that you used to be at immediately. And most men, once they realize this, just keep sinking further and further into this rut, largely because of the ego and self pride we've built from our past achievements. But what if after falling into a rut. You accepted that you're no longer as good as you used to be. Accepting that you're no longer the guy who can make 52 songs in 1 year or code an entire website in 1 day. Then you would see yourself, your current self, your inner rut self more objectively. You would realize that now you're only capable of doing like 13 songs a year. So you would do the 13 songs and then eventually build up back up to the point where you can make 52 or more. Us young men have basically infinite energy. Like sleep is only necessary because we have physical bodies, but it's like I think our spiritual and mental capacity, man, it's endless. And when we're not focused on something to build, we start focusing on things to destroy. I remember Hamza made a video about this where last year where he was quoting, I think it was Sun Tzu. He was quoting someone, and the quote went like, "The warlike man attacks in times of peace. The warlike man attacks himself." And men are just naturally warlike. You know, throughout our history as a species or as any like civilization, we've always been a species of warring tribes. We make resources or we get resources by taking them from other tribes. And when we are not taking from like the world or like contributing to the world, we start taking away from our own selves. So yeah, there's a reason that we feel like shit when we are not using that infinite energy productively. It's because God did not design us to be wastes of space. Young men were designed to build a world. So, of course, when we're not building, we default to destroying. If you're a man in a rut and you have listened to this thread this far, I hope you can appreciate that unique talent that we're given and realize that the little you can build now is only a step towards the greatness that you will build later. So don't discredit it just because you have built more and higher in the past. Accept that you're not as good as you used to be. Kill your ego and decide to build back up to that point you used to be at and even beyond. Now, with the newfound awareness and wisdom of what happens when you destroy constantly. I hope that your regret makes you wiser and you channel it in your newfound endeavors. You find a new mission that can help you get out of this rut. Because if you don't focus on something to build, you will just continue to keep destroying as you are now. Like if you've listened this far in the video, it's because what I've said resonates with you. Because you know there's some area of your life where you're just constantly destroying, and you don't have to. You don't have to be immediately the guy with the veiny 8-pack again. But at least don't keep destroying the 2-pack that you have left now. So anyway, that's it for this video. If you got any value out of this, stick around for more insightful takes like this by hitting that subscribe button. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.